One of the many reasons that One Piece is so fun is because of the characters and the very many groups that they could possibly be in. You've got pirates who are all different, marines with different philosophies than others, and even some normal citizens that can steal the show in some cases. Something great about all these character groups is that each of them have something eccentric about them that makes them stand out and makes them worthy of a video on this channel. There are so many groups to talk about, in fact, that I didn't even mention the one that I'll be talking about today, and it's one of the most interesting in my opinion. So, we've got the pirates that go against the world government and other pirates on their adventures, we've got the marines that try to hunt the pirates down, and we've got the Revolutionary Army who are fighting back against the oppressive rulers all over the One Piece world. And it's that final group that we're here to talk about today, as the Revolutionary Army is not only a really interesting group, with the story finally reaching the endgame, they're only becoming more important. The Egghead Island arc even featured a backstory for one of their most important members, and more people around the world are starting to follow them now because of the Flame Emperor Sabo. That's definitely something that we'll be talking about a little bit later on in this video, but I do think that I should give you guys a little background information on the army itself before I start talking about specific characters. The Revolutionary Army is an extremely powerful military organization founded and led by Monkey D. Dragon. That is in fact Luffy's father, and the group was originally known as the Freedom Fighters before assuming their current name, and they're also the most prominent force in the world that directly opposes the world government and seeks to dismantle it. They're also particularly against the world nobles of Marajwa, who control and benefit from the corruption of the world government. They're going up against the power that people can't even touch without an admiral of the navy being called on them, and they're not even the only threats that they face. This is because the Blackbeard pirates also destroyed their original base on the island of Baltigo, but they've now relocated to Momoiro Island, the home of the Kamabaka Kingdom. The Revolutionary Army isn't a force that we check in with very often, but whenever we do, they're either doing some crazy shit, or we learn some piece of lore about them that changes a lot. Something that I love to do in these videos is talking about the specific characters in each of these groups because they're the most interesting thing about them, and the same thing is true here. There are 9 members of this group that are worth talking about in this first video in my opinion, and most of them either have really cool designs, a role that makes discussion about them necessary, a really interesting character, or all 3 of those things at once. Even though the Revolutionary Army hasn't done all that much in the grand scheme of the story just yet, there's a reason that they keep popping up, and why the Straw Hats keep getting more and more connected to them. Monkey D. Dragon, also known as the Rebellious Dragon, is the infamous Supreme Commander and founder of the Revolutionary Army. A former Marine, his disgust with the organization's actions in the God Valley incident and its brutality in the Ohara incident led to him forming the Revolutionary Army to oppose the world government in its entirety. Seeing as he's been doing this for the last 30 years, he's been branded as the world's worst criminal, and a lot of people believe that he actually has the highest bounty in the series, we just haven't seen what it is yet. In all honesty, he's just got a lot of aura, as when he first appeared during the Logtown arc, he was just a shadowy figure that saved Luffy from Smoker, back when Luffy couldn't do anything against him. As of right now, we really don't know all that much about Dragon, aside from his standing as the leader of the Revolutionary Army, and his role during the God Valley incident, since he was present in the flashback that we just got. In fact, he's the reason that both Shanks and Shamrock are alive today, as Garling wanted to use the incident to kill both his children and the woman that he had them with while he was scouting out the island one time. This has led to Shamrock holding the ranks that he currently holds in the Holy Knights, and has led to the standing that Shanks currently has in the pirate world. As the leader of the Revolutionary Army, Dragon is dedicated to dismantling the world government and its corrupt nobility system that allows its world nobles to oppress lower class citizens as they please. He considers the corrupt nobility of the Goa Kingdom to be the same problem on a smaller scale, and was enraged when the self-serving actions caused an innocent noble boy like Sabo to denounce them, as well as being ashamed and despising his own birth. That is a pretty insane thing about nobility in One Piece, as the kings and royalty of certain kingdoms really do hold the power to oppress their own citizens, but they really hold no power in the grand scheme of things because the Celestial Dragons hold all the real power. Despite the fact that we haven't really seen Dragon all that much, he's more than just an angry person, as he's extremely empathetic to those that have been oppressed by the world government system. The 2 biggest examples of this are when he heard out Sabo's plight during the post-war arc, and how broken he became when he he thought that he failed to save both Shanks and Shamrock during the God Valley incident. There are also a lot of agendas surrounding Dragon in the fandom, mainly that he's just like a Kainu post-time skip, and just sits behind his desk, not really doing anything. With that being said, I don't think that that's true at all. We've just seen that Dragon is very cautious when it comes to information, and as recently as the Reverie arc, it seems like the Revolutionary Army is about to declare war on the Celestial Dragons. Even though Dragon has never been a part of Luffy's life because of the potential danger that he could put him in, I do find it really interesting how much he still cares about his son and sees the potential that he definitely does have. Even during his first appearance during Logue Town, he hoped that his son decided to become a pirate would play a role in the world shifting, and it definitely has from all the stuff that we've already seen. Despite the fact that he hasn't really done all that much at the current day of the story, there are a few cool things that he's done, and one of them was taking Robin in during the time skip. Robin being with the Revolutionary Army for about 2 years has definitely changed her character just a little bit, and them caring about both Luffy and Robin is definitely going to play a role in future interactions that the two groups have. The craziest stuff that we've seen him do so far, however, came during the Egghead Island arc after Sabo came back from his trip to Mirajois and survived the destruction of the Lulusia Kingdom. This is because, despite the amount of time that Dragon has been fighting against the world nobles, he didn't know about the existence of the true king of the world, Emu, and now that he knows this information, it could definitely speed up any plans that they already had. It was because of this meeting that we may have also learned the true identity of Emu, as Ivankov speculated that they could be one of the first 20 kings who created the world government, specifically one named Nerona Emu, who could potentially possess perennial youth as well. Dragon is the perfect character to be the leader of the Revolutionary Army, and I can't wait to actually see him in action, because I believe that he's pretty damn powerful, despite the fact that we've never seen him fight before. Flame Emperor Sabo is the Revolutionary Army's chief of staff, recognized as the number 2 of the entire organization under the Supreme Commander, Monkey D. Dragon. He's also the sworn brother of the notorious pirate Monkey D. Luffy and the late Portugus D. Ace. We didn't really learn anything about this guy until the post-war arc, where it was revealed that Luffy and Ace actually had a third brother, but there's a pretty massive reason for that. He was actually nobility of the Goa Kingdom, as we briefly discussed when talking about Dragon, but he hated that life, so he ran away, met Luffy and Ace, and then lived as a vagabond in Grey Terminal. After becoming brothers with them, but then getting taken back forcefully by his own family, he tried to set sail on his own to get away from his family, only to have his ship destroyed by a celestial dragon on his way to visit the Goa Kingdom. Luckily, he was saved by Dragon after this happened, but he lost his memory in the process, so that's why he's devoted his life to the service of the Revolutionary Army. Sabo was only able to regain his memories after reading about Ace's death in a newspaper after the Marineford War, and 2 years after his death, he carried on Ace's legacy by eating his devil fruit. He's also stated that he'll abandon his Revolutionary Army duties if he has to protect his little brother Luffy, but I don't really see a world where he'll have to do that, given Luffy's current power level. Sabo also stormed Mirajois with some of his comrades during the last Reverie, and after he did so, he was framed for the murder of Nefertari Cobra, increasing his notoriety across the world and sparking several rebellions. Sabo is a character that you kinda have to just accept sometimes given the way that he was introduced into the story, but now that he's an established character, he is one that I find myself enjoying. It feels like there were a lot of other times that either Luffy or Ace could have heard about Sabo, or the other way around, but Ace's death being such a powerful emotional moment definitely leads some credence to that being so shocking that it forced Sabo's mind to remember. He's also definitely got some of the personality of both Ace and Luffy, because even though he does hold a pretty important position in the Revolutionary Army, he will disobey orders on impulse, shown to us when he fights against Fujitora for a short amount of time during the Dressrosa arc. Ace's death really did affect Sabo just like it did Luffy, as he can't help but think that he would have been able to save Ace if he knew what was going on, and that definitely contributes to the fierce protective streak that he has over Luffy. Sabo has also been shown to be just a little bit insane, but that only makes sense given the brain damage that he probably has, given the fact that he literally lost his memories for 10 years. The biggest example of this comes during the Dressrosa arc, when he uses his Ryusoken techniques to break Bastile's metal mask, and just keeps crushing even after it's broken. Given the fact that Sabo has only really been a thing since the time skip, most of his actions that we'll be talking about happened after it, but he really was a little shit in his youth. Him, Luffy, and Ace used to steal from people, pretend to be an adult to swipe free meals, and even force Dodon to take him in, even though she really didn't want to. With that being said, Dodon still loves all 3 of those boys and would do anything for them, shown to us when she attacks Garp during the post-war arc. Sabo's reunion with Luffy during the Dressrosa arc is also one of the most emotional moments in the entire story in my opinion, as it honestly does make me shed a tear almost every time I see it, even though I've seen it a ton of times at this point. While Sabo definitely does make his presence known during the Dressrosa arc and eats Ace's fruit, the crazy shit that he does takes place from the Reverie arc and beyond. This is because, as we've already discussed, the Revolutionary Army has declared war on the world nobles, and they did so while invading the most recent Reverie. With that being said, there was also some other stuff that went down during this time, as Kuma was a slave to the Celestial Dragons at this point, and as soon as Sabo saw him, he resolved to save Kuma from his enslavement. Then, on the 4th day of the Reverie, both Karasu and Morley battled against Fujitora and Green Bull respectively, while Sabo went to rescue Kuma and Lindbergh freed the slaves. It was during his freeing of Kuma that he stumbled into the room with the empty throne, only to see Imu on that throne and the 5 elders about to execute Cobra. This caused him to fight against them, and even though he wasn't able to do much himself, he was able to survive the encounter and tell Dragon and Ivankov about Imu, just like we discussed during Dragon's section. That means that both Sabo and Luffy have now survived encounters with the Gorosei, making the Sworn Brothers some of the only people to ever say that they've done just that. It was also during Vegapunk's broadcast that Sabo finally figured out why the Celestial Dragons chose to live at the top of the Red Line, as it would be the last place to sink because of the world's rising sea levels. Sabo is yet another character that's only gonna grow in importance as the end of this story grows closer, as his influence is on the same level as Dragon's now, and he's the sworn brother of the Warrior of Liberation. He's also just really cool and is really making the Mera Mera no Mi his own after inheriting it from his other brother. Emporio Ivankov, or Eva for short, is the queen of the Kamabaka Kingdom, is known as Okama King, and a miracle person. He's one of the Revolutionary Army's founding members, as well as the commander of the G Army, which covers the Grand Line. A former slave of the world nobles, he escaped during the native hunting competition on God Valley, and was responsible for the God Valley incident along with Ginny. He was also formerly a prisoner of Impel Down, where he was kept in level 5, but lived in the secret Okama paradise of level 5.5. After escaping from Impel Down and participating in the Marineford War, he returned to his post as the queen of the Kamabaka Kingdom. Ivankov was truly a major player during the Impel Down arc, and even helped the Straw Hats during the time skip, as Sanji was sent to his island where he ended up training. I've already talked about Ivankov a few times on this channel, and that only makes sense because he's pretty damn absurd, has an insane devil fruit, and also just doesn't give a fuck. He started his life as a slave, so he lives his life like he doesn't have anything to lose, and we've seen that from the God Valley incident and beyond. While Ginny and Kuma decided to chill in Ginny's homeland once they were free, Ivankov immediately used his newly gained freedom to sail the world, and that's when he eventually became friends with Dragon and helped him form the Revolutionary Army. And Ivankov has always been this way, as in his youth, he was as theatrical and flamboyant as he is in the present. His revolutionary spirit was also very clear back then, as it was his leadership and wish for freedom that spurred several fellow slaves, including a young Kuma, to attempt to escape a genocidal hunt organized by their masters. I just love Ivankov's character if I'm being completely honest, and even though he's known as a miracle person, he believes that miracles only come to those who never give up, and therefore should not be taken lightly of, and nor should those who can muster within themselves to produce such also be looked down upon. The biggest example of this has to be when he gave Luffy the healing hormones during the Impel Down arc, and said that if he fought like hell, then he would be able to survive. I've also talked about his devil fruit a ton on this channel already, but I can't really help but talk about it here again, just because of how insane it is. Ivankov has a devil fruit called the Horu Horu no Mi, and this devil fruit allows the user to create a variety of special hormones that can alter the recipient's body in any way the user desires. This is definitely useful, like when he used it to help heal Luffy and give him a major adrenaline boost during the Marineford War, but those uses aren't what make the fruit so insane. The most insane thing that Ivankov can do with this fruit is force a sex change on a person, something that we've seen him do multiple times despite the fact that he really hasn't appeared all that often. He can also perform these sex changes on himself, another thing that we've seen him do multiple times, even confusing Sanji when he first landed in the Kamabaka Kingdom. I know for a fact that I've talked about this in every video where Ivankov has come up, and I'll talk about it again if it ever comes up again, solely because I think it's just absolutely insane that this is possible. This man Ivankov is also 449 centimeters or 14 feet 8 inches tall, and something tells me that he's not even the tallest person that we'll be talking about today. Karasu Karasu is a member of the Revolutionary Army, serving as one of its executive officers and the commander of the North Army. He technically first appeared in chapter 593 when one of his crows dropped off a newspaper, but his real first appearance came during the Reverie arc. He also technically appears in the Dressrosa arc since his crows are what Sabo flies back on at the end of the arc, but we aren't here to talk about his crows, so I'll leave them alone for now. 2 days before the Reverie, Karasu and his fellow commanders Lindbergh, Belobetti, and Morley went to the Lulusia Kingdom to protect it from the pillaging Peachbeard pirates. It was at this moment where we got to see how strong some of the Revolutionary Army could be, because even though the Peachbeard pirates are pretty fodder in the grand scheme of things, they got defeated like the fodder that they are, and those members showed off some pretty cool powers. Speaking of those pretty cool powers, Karasu has his Susu no Mi, which allows him to create, control, and transform into soot at will. Now this is a really overpowered Logia fruit, but the coolest thing that Karasu does with it is create his various crows, so many in fact that I thought that his devil fruit had something to do with crows for the longest time. Now that technically still is the case, it's just that these crows aren't actually real and have been made out of soot the whole time. Now even though we haven't seen Karasu all that much, we do know a little bit about his personality, like the fact that he's an honorable man who despises those who attack the weak. He's also very quiet, and he usually communicates via inaudible mumbling, thus he needs his loudspeaker mask to be heard by others. I also thought that this was just a part of his drip for the longest time since he likes birds so much, but it turns out that it's actually integral in him even being heard at all. That's honestly really cool and makes his design even better, and this definitely isn't the first time that Oda has used character design to improve a character's looks and versatility, as even Captain Morgan's elbow is so sharp on his axe hand that it can be used as a handle. Karasu is just really cool, and it's clear that he's a threat to the world government as he has a 400 million berry bounty and was even able to fight Fujitora by himself for a significant amount of time. One of the reasons that I'm making this video is because I can't wait to see the Revolutionary Army do more things in the story, and Karasu and his cool character design are one of the reasons as to why. Belobetti is the commander of the East Army in the Revolutionary Army, and she succeeded the previous commander Ginny 8 years after her death. She's only appeared in the story a few times so far, but she's definitely stuck in the minds of a lot of One Piece fans for a reason that I can't really seem to put my finger on. Her first major appearance was on Lulusia with her other commanders, and it was here where we got to see her really interesting devil fruit. Belobetti ate the Kobu no Mi, a paramecia devil fruit that allows her to encourage and rally people into fighting, increasing their resolve and physical strength in the process. She activates her power by speaking encouraging words to her targets, and once someone has been encouraged, this power will keep their fighting spirit going for quite some time, though it is unknown how long this power actually stays in effect or if it even has a time limit at all. We've only seen this power in use one time, and that was when she used it on the citizens of the Lulusia Kingdom when the Peachbeard pirates were attacking. I would say that it's pretty damn effective in all honesty, as even the girl that we met in Ace's cover story, Moda, was given the motivation to attack Peachbeard himself. As a commander of the Revolutionary Army, she's also got a pretty high bounty at 457 million berries, and the fact that she can also easily rally people behind her definitely has to make that thing rise. Betty quite literally has like 5 total appearances in the story so far, and most of them occur with other members present, so she's another character that I can't wait to see more of and learn more about. With that being said, with her most recent appearance, she greeted the survivors of the Lulusia Kingdom to Momoiro Island, remembering them from the liberation of the Peachbeard pirates before enlisting them into the Revolutionary Army. This is just another example of how the Revolutionary Army keeps growing behind the scenes, and it's gotta help that you've got a person that can hype you up beyond belief on the squad. Morley of Fur is a giant and a newcomer, as well as the commander of the West Army in the Revolutionary Army. Morley first appeared in chapter 904 when Sabo and crew were already under the Holy Land, and one of the reasons they were able to be down there was because of Morley's devil fruit. Morley's devil fruit is called the Oshi no Mi, which is a paramecia devil fruit that allows the user to freely move and shape the ground as though it was malleable like clay. Now this is an insanely good fruit for stealth, and there's no doubt about it, so Oda giving it to a literal giant is a really funny choice, and Morley honestly uses it quite well despite her size. One of the coolest things about Morley in my opinion is that her past was actually revealed in an SBS, and I just know for a fact that I'll be making a video series about the SBS sections in the future, solely because of how important they are to the story. Over 100 years before the start of the story, Morley was a wanted pirate who was imprisoned at Impel Down. Using her devil fruit, she managed to escape the prison, a fact that remained unknown for a long time, allowing the prison to keep its status as being unbreakable until Shiki's escape many years later. The tunnels Morley carved with her devil fruit abilities would later be known as level 5.5, which housed the new Kama land. So, Morley was the reason that Ivankov was able to stay there for so long, and why Bon Clay is able to stay there at the current day, even though everybody thought that he was gonna die after his encounter with Magellan. Morley hasn't appeared all that often in the story yet, but it's clear that she plays an important role in the Revolutionary Army, and the fact that she's a giant means that she would have been a force to be reckoned with, even without any training. With that being said, it's clear that Morley has had some training, because she was the one that fought alone against Green Bull, while Karasu was fighting against Fujitora. I just don't have much to say about some of these members because of how the Revolutionary Army hasn't done all that much yet, but Morley is stuck in my head from her very first appearance, so that's gotta be a good thing. Lindbergh, or Lind for short, is a cat mink and the commander of the Revolutionary Army's South Army. This is another guy whose two main appearances happen on Leluja and during the Reverie, but his design has made him stand out from the very beginning. This guy looks like the cat version of a mad scientist, and that's exactly what he is, because we've already seen quite a few of his inventions despite his limited appearances. As a member of the Mink tribe, Lindbergh is a natural-born warrior and is capable of using Electro. He's also able to transform into his Sulong form when he sees the full moon, though it's unknown if he can control it like somebody like Carrot. The coolest thing about Lindbergh is his numerous inventions, however, as he's a highly skilled inventor, having created weapons and gadgets of advanced technology that he uses for combat. He also created a laser weapon, which only genius engineers such as Vegapunk, Queen, and Frankie have created, and he's also skilled enough to repair the cybernetic body of Kuma. And if that wasn't enough, he also created a jetpack that gives him the ability to fly, something that I feel is necessary for any fictional engineer to have. Another one of his many weapons that we've gotten to see is called a Cool Shooter, and it can fire rapid bullets that freeze small sections of its target's bodies. It just really sucks that a character that looks as cool as this guy hasn't really had his own moments in the story yet, and he better have some insane inventions that make the final battle easier for our good guys. I mean, he's literally a cat with a jetpack, so he'll be cool no matter what, but he's gotta do some other stuff before I can talk about him more in a video. Bartholomew Kuma is a former warlord of the sea, the former king of the Sorbet Kingdom, and most notably an officer, as well as a founding member of the Revolutionary Army. Now, I may have already talked about Kuma a lot in my video about the original 7 warlords of the sea, but here I'm gonna mostly be talking about the stuff that he did with the Revolutionary Army, both in the past and at the current day. As we know, 22 years ago, after King Beccari instilled a new segregation policy that reduced the Sorbet Kingdom to just its northern province and turned the south into a lawless land, Kuma went to Sorbet's castle town in order to protest the enslavement of some of the elders that he cared for. This eventually escalated into a fight between Kuma and the kingdom's royal army, which ended in the former being imprisoned for treason. It was while both Kuma and Ginny were in prison that Dragon and Ivankov invaded the country and eventually took it over, overthrowing Beccari in the process. This of course led to Kuma joining the Revolutionary Army, but he still returned to the Sorbet Kingdom periodically to watch over its elderly population, having grown attached to their plea and well-being. Kuma was just a regular member of the Revolutionary Army for 8 years after this, but that was before Ginny was captured in order to become the wife of a world noble. As we talked about in the 7 Warlords of the Sea video, this turned Kuma into a more daring and ruthless soldier, but that was because the woman that he loved was captured by the very enemy that his entire organization is fighting. Now, we all know that this eventually led to Kuma taking Bonnie in as his own, and him losing his free will because of it, but we've learned recently that he definitely didn't completely lose it, even though he was supposed to. Everything got crazy once the rest of his Revolutionary Army comrades saved him from the clutches of the Celestial Dragons, where he was being used as an extra strong slave because of the fact that he's a buccaneer and a cyborg. As we talked about in the Sabo section, they immediately went into action when they saw their former comrade in that state, and they were actually able to save him and take him back to their base of operations. This is where one of the saddest moments in the entire series happens in my opinion, as when Dragon asked Kuma to tell him what he saw in Mirajois. When Kuma complied, he referred to Dragon as Master. This is just something that Kuma would never do, as it's clear that his programming and time in the Holy Land has really changed him, and seeing the reactions of his Revolutionary Army comrades truly makes you sad. It's just a mix of anger and sadness that's truly upsetting, and it only gets crazier once he just randomly stands up, starts running, and then teleports away using his devil fruit powers. We had no idea what he was doing at the time, but he ended up climbing up the entire red line, escaping from a Akainu as he was firing magma fists at him, and eventually ended up on Egghead Island where he saved Bonnie from Saturn. He gave Bonnie hope when it seemed like she was about to give up, and it was this hope and the reveal that Luffy is Nika that eventually allowed Bonnie to transform into Nika herself. Ever since the end of the Egghead Island arc, Kuma has been by Bonnie's side, and it's clear that Vegapunk plans on restoring Kuma's mind once he's able to complete his lab on Elbaf, which will become his current base. Given the fact that Vegapunk is the greatest scientist in the world, it isn't out of the realm of possibility that we see a mind-restored Kuma by the end of the story, but I don't know if I even want to see him fight again if his mind is restored. I just feel like he's fought enough and deserves to just have a happy life with Bonnie until the story is over, but One Piece might just be a story that's just dark enough that he won't be able to do that. Jinny was the former East Army commander of the Revolutionary Army, having joined the group alongside Kuma 22 years ago, back when they were known as the Freedom Fighters. Even though she started her life as a slave, she was eventually captured again when she was a member of the Revolutionary Army, where she was forced to become the 8th wife of a world noble. It was during this time that she not only had Bonnie, but also developed the deadly disease of sapphire scales after a failed experiment. Jinny is the classic example of a tragic One Piece character alongside the man that she loved, Kuma, as she wasn't even able to marry him because of his fears of what eventually happened to her. With that being said, we know for a fact that the two loved each other as much as two people could possibly love each other, and I honestly think this is one of the best relationships that Oda has written in the entire story. It's that compelling. Jinny herself was also just a person that you would want to be around, as she always kept a positive attitude despite being a slave, was very gluttonous, and didn't respond kindly to anybody who bullied her friends. The scene of her and Kuma crying as they ate directly after they got to the Sorbet Kingdom after the God Valley incident will always be a scene that sticks with me, and it may or may not be making me shed a tear as I write this very sentence. I mean, it was just so tragic. Her final words to Kuma were her declaration of love towards him, but he didn't get to hear them because he was using his fruit to teleport and try to get to her as quickly as he could. Jinny was a character that literally appeared in chapter 1095, but she's a character that's unforgettable in my opinion, not just because she's a member of the saddest flashback in the entire series, but also because of the interesting character that she is on her own. And with that being said, we've talked about the leader, chief of staff, and all of the army commanders of the Revolutionary Army. They've been a force that's been building up in the background for quite a while now, and I truly can't wait for the moment that they strike in some all-out sort of way. Honestly, with what's going on in Elbaf right now, I could see it happening pretty soon, but only time will tell if I'm right about that prediction. With that being said, I do think that I'm out of things to say about this army for now, so I think it's time to end things here. Please join me next time for whatever I post next. Please leave a like and maybe subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.